A little over 100 kilometers north of the Alberta border lies the town of Hay River. It's known as Hub of the North because all transportation to the Northwest Territories begins or ends here. With a population of only 4,000, it's the second largest city in the territory. Like so much of the North, it's surrounded by natural beauty, including 3 waterfalls, the most spectacular being Alexandria. Much of the living here is made off the land, whether through forestry, agriculture, oil and gas, fishing, or mining. But the fishery is suffering because prices haven't risen much in the last decade. That reality forced third-generation fisherman Sean Buckley to come up with a new plan. Not wanting to leave what he loves, he launched into the tourism business, commercial fishery tourism.
I have everything set up exactly the way the commercial fishery is. Set up my camps out there on the ice early as I can, and I bring the tourists 8 at a time, up to 8 at a time in the bombardier.
He invited us to experience a little of what he does in his bombardier, which looked like a cross between an overgrown snowmobile and a tank.
There's 2 escape hatches on this bombardier. Most only have 1 in front there.
These escape hatches are if we fall through the ice, the idea is?
Yeah, initially that's what they're for. For any kind of impending dangers.
Oh, that's
areas.
good to know.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. So we set out 5 miles into the 10th largest lake in the world and the deepest in North America, the Great Slave. Sean and his helper Mike showed us how the fishery worked and pulled in an excellent catch of whitefish, trout, inconnu, cisco, and burbot. Poor little fish.
Hey, you ate one last night.
I did. Because it was the last day his bombardier could go out on the lake, his huts had already been dismantled. So we settled for a delicious meal of smoked fish and bannock, a local soda bread.
Oh, that's good. Smoky flavor is good.
Mm-hmm.
Tourism has been an unexpected blessing for Sean. He says the hours he spends chatting with guests around the fire have been a healing force in his life.
It's cold, but they really appreciate that, getting in the cabin and having a cup of tea or hot chocolate and just relaxing and unwinding and talking. And it's it's a real therapeutic, if you will. Like, it's really a nice calm setting. People talk about different things in their life, and it just kind of escalates, everybody has a little say. It's like a group therapy thing.
It was time to go back, so we made our way over a crack in the ice. Man, don't look at that crack up there, John. Don't shoot the crack. Onto a much more melted river, which made my cameraman, protecting his rather expensive camera, nervous. We're alive! John, we made it! We made our way back into town, which was currently hosting a yearly Northern Harvest Conference at the Pentecostal Church. But there was something different about this event and its organizers.
We knew that we had to do something to show the community that Jesus Christ was not just the Pentecostal church or the Anglican church or the Baptist church. We all put in the same amount of money. We all made the same commitment to set these days aside. We all made the commitment that we would be here and be part of whatever God was going to do, and that's exactly what has happened.
Hay River's Ministerial Association is made up of the Catholic, Baptist, Anglican, and Pentecostal churches in town. These very different denominations meet weekly for prayer, and their partnership has grown in leaps and bounds.
We also have a youth center under our banner. We have an organization called the Tree House, which is a drop-in center for those that are between the ages of 0 and 6. Under our banner, we're starting up in the month of May is a youth church called the Lighthouse. We also have a soup kitchen under our auspices.
Anglican minister Vivian Smith says people are amazed when they see how close these church leaders are.
And they said, I can't believe this is happening. What have happened here? And we've said, because we love Christ. We love our people. And we don't say to them, come to my church. We say, we don't care what church you go to as long as you go to a church.
It was these 4 churches that invited Crossroads founder David Mainse to be the keynote speaker for their 2008 Northern Harvest Conference.
To have someone of David's influence, reputation, be able to come to a community of just between 4,000 and 4,500. But we are the hub of the North, we have to understand that.
And David Mainse's arrival in town was greeted with great warmth. and excitement.
Well, yes, it's very exciting. It's just exciting for everybody, and it's been in the newspaper, in our little newspaper, The Hub, and everybody's been talking about it.
We're so blessed to be in a small town the size we are, and to have a man of his caliber come in and speak to us.
I am so happy. I'm so glad that I came, because I don't belong to this church. I belong to the Catholic Church. But it is just amazing. The faith's alive. It's just alive, you know. I can feel it. I almost felt like I was transformed.
But most encouraging for the ministerial team was the response they saw outside the church walls.
Just earlier on this week, there was a man who contacted one of my people, and he said, "David Mainse coming to town." I said, "Yeah." He says, "That's good." He says, "I am so glad to see the churches working together." And this guy is not a guy who regularly comes to church.
But it wasn't just the conference that drew David to the north. He'd made a promise to Canada's First Nations people, and he intended to fulfill part of it here.
I brought 2 sets of books. This Native community, which we've entered now.
The Kaladeche First Nation was the recipient of the Lending Library David brought, a project he's been working on in many reserves across Canada ever since he heard the story of former Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, James Bartleman.
And after he got out of school, the government had provided books up to that point. The only book he had was 1 volume of the Encyclopedia Britannica, and he practically memorized that. And so James Bartleman was the one that challenged me to help put books into the native reserves across the land. This is a future chief right here. Just lots of books that I hope will inspire young people particularly to great things. You know, the suicide rates in our First Nations community are considerably higher than the national average, and that's simply because hopelessness. Where do I go from here? And the Native people were the people God put first on this land. They are God's gatekeepers. They have authority before God, spiritual authority over this land. Just because the Europeans arrived here doesn't mean that the natives don't still have the great authority over this land. And so it is incumbent upon us to really, really love our neighbors as ourselves. That's it. In fact, he went over.
Although officially retired, David says that should never be an excuse to stop doing God's work.
And in fact, one of the worst things an old man can ever do is sit around the lazy boy chair. He'll be dead in a couple of years. And often people stop. They don't have a passion anymore for the things to which their life has been given. And it's the time not to stop, but to keep the discipline and to keep the passion up. And to use whatever strength God gives to you to make a difference if you can.
And this Weekend in the North testifies to the difference one person can make, no matter what their age. In Hay River, Northwest Territories, Cheryl Weber, 100 Huntley Street.